It looks like Tony Khan syndrome could be contagious because Y2-JACKASS Chris Jericho is also getting very salty over the fact that NXT whooped AEW's ass. Welcome back, guys, to Fog Wrestling. If you're a wrestling fan, then you know over the past week Tony Khan has been having a literal meltdown on Twitter and any other form of social media he can get his little hands on. This daddy-made billionaire has completely thrown the toys out the pram because not once but 2 weeks in a row now AEW has lost the ratings war against NXT. Now, I wouldn't even consider it a war. They're not even on the same night, but it's affecting Tony Khan. It's bothering Tony Khan. And now it is bothering Y2J, Chris Jericho. One of my favourite wrestlers. I'm not going to say that I don't like the guy anymore because he's kissing Tony Khan's ass, but let's be honest, he is kissing Tony Khan's ass, and it is a very, very bad look. And Chris Jericho was doing an interview with the Messenger. I don't know what it is. Who cares, really? But the point is, the so-called demo god spoke on the topic about ratings and how WWE needed to essentially cheat to beat AEW in the ratings. So we're going to go through it here. There's basically 4 sections. I'm going to read through each one and then I'll give my opinion on it as we go through. But this is very embarrassing for Chris Jericho. He contradicts himself and he just tries to compare apples to oranges and he is way off target. Definitely an L take for Chris Jericho. But anyway, let's get into it. So this is the first thing Chris Jericho had to say. Quote, you can only bring in Cena and Undertaker and Cody and everybody else so much because nobody wants to work on their secondary show all the time. And it was a little, hey, fuck you, AEW. I didn't even really worry about it. It was just an opportunity to stick it to us with stunt casting. End of quote. There's so much wrong with this. I know he didn't even say much, but there's so much wrong with it. First of all, he says nobody wants to work on their secondary show all the time. Well, NXT is not their secondary show. That would be Raw. It's quite clear now that SmackDown's the A show, Raw is the B show, and if you want to consider NXT the C show, then that's fair enough. But deep down, we all know it's not even really a C show, it is development. But if you want to try and say it's their secondary show, then so be it. And second of all, he says that nobody wants to work on their secondary show all the time. Well, Becky Lynch is currently the champion on there, and I'm pretty sure that everybody in WWE do respect the company. They're company men, and if they were asked to move to NXT for a period of time, they would. Look at Baron Corbin. He's just moved. You've got Becky Lynch on there. You constantly have people moving down to NXT sometimes when there's nothing for them on the main roster. So if WWE wants someone to go in NXT, they will. He says it was a little fuck you at AEW. How? It was NXT trying to put on a good rating. They knew that AEW was moving that night to Tuesday. NXT probably didn't want to get hammered. They wanted to try and do stuff to protect their rating, and they're entitled to do that. Why wouldn't they do that? It's no different to Monday Night Raw going up against Monday Night Football and them trying to put on a good... And I know Raw don't really do it anymore because I don't think there's anything you can do that can save Monday Night Raw. Nobody you can put on Raw is going to make it interesting. But it's no different from that. Companies have done this all the time. Tony Khan's done it when AEW's up against basketball or whatnot. If you're up against something that can take ratings away for you, then you're going to put a little bit more effort into the show. You're going to try and get the bigger names. You're going to try and do whatever you can to try and protect that rating. That's all that WWE done. It was nothing to do with fuck you AEW. Don't think WWE are petty like Chris Jericho and Tony Khan. They simply wanted to do what they think would get the better rating. And if they could put Cena, Undertaker and Cody on NXT and it could get them a better rating, then so be it. But let's not forget that NXT did beat AEW the week before and they didn't have Undertaker or John Cena. So Chris Jericho needs to remember that. And then he says, I didn't even really worry about it. It was just an opportunity to stick it to us with stunt casting. How's it stunt casting? They use people that are employed to the company. They use WWE wrestlers. It's no different from AEW using any wrestler that they've got at their disposal. And he said he didn't worry about it. Well, clearly with the whole fallout and the way you're reacting now, Chris, you did worry about it and you're still worrying about it right now to this day. So that's my thoughts on that. Then Jericho went on and he revealed he told Tony Khan to bring in some big celebrity names, but Khan wanted to do a show with his regular talent. Chris says, quote, I told Tony, well, if you want to fire back, bring in Shaq and Snoop Dogg and those type of guys, Mike Tyson. But Tony didn't do that. We relied on our show and our guys and our girls, and that's the way it's always been for us. End of quote. Bullshit! How can you even make that comparison? What do you mean bringing... So this guy, hold on, Chris Jericho's going to bash WWE for putting Cena, a guy, an Undertaker, employees, wrestlers, guys that have been legends in WWE for decades now. He complains about them being on NXT, but he thinks that it's okay to bring in Shaq, Snoop Dogg and Mike Tyson. They're not even wrestlers, they're fucking celebrities. How can Chris Jericho not see the hypocrisy here? The guy's just contradicting himself. Yeah, bring in Shaq, bring in Snoop Dogg, bring in Mike Tyson to try and combat WWE fucking wrestlers. Why can't AEW combat Cena and Taker with a roster? If guys like Daniel Bryan and if Kenny Omega is this big star, oh, Dave Meltzer, he likes to masturbate over Kenny Omega 24/7. Oh, and who's the other guy? Will Ospreay, greatest wrestler in the world. If Will Ospreay's so great, why not put him in the main event and get a better rating than NXT? I'll tell you why, because Will Ospreay is a fucking nobody. Nobody cares about Will Ospreay and his 25 super kicks and his no selling during a match. Nobody gives a fuck. Wrestling's always been about larger than life characters, personalities, storylines. Why can't you stupid fucks get that in your head? Nobody cares about Kenny Omega and his fucking knee trigger and wrestling up blow up dolls. Fuck that shit. Fuck AEW. Fuck Chris Jericho, man. Can I get some of my tits? Anyway, speaking of tits, let's see what Flabby Man got to say next. So he moved on. But I mean, come on! I mean, to bash WWE for using Cena and Cody, and then say, "Well, we could bring in Shaq and Snoop Dogg." Well, then couldn't WWE just bring in Donald Trump? Couldn't they? If Chris Jericho wants to go down that road, and trust me, who's going to draw more? Who's going to get a bigger rating? Shaq, Snoop Dogg, and Mike Tyson, or Donald J. Trump? Who do you think's going to get a better rating there? I mean, you know the answer. So let's just move on. Chris Jericho talking shite as per usual. Staying on subject, Chris Jericho then went on to say how he feels WWE are all high and mighty, but told them not to feel that way. This is what Chris Jericho said. So, quote, "So don't get too far up your own ass because you didn't do that good of a job as far as crushing us, and our show is better than theirs, quite frankly. So it doesn't bother me." End of quote. I mean, for something that doesn't bother Chris Jericho, he keeps talking about it a hell of a lot. He says this doesn't bother him, yet all he does is go on about it. And to say that it didn't squash them, I mean, to say that it didn't destroy them, I think he is talking absolute nonsense here. I mean, what does he mean? They beat them by over 300,000. They beat them by more than 50%. NXT got like 927. AEW just scraped 600,000. They beat them by 50% more. And he says it wasn't a massacre. What do you mean it wasn't a massacre? When was the last time... Listen, when was the last time Dynamite beat NXT by more than 50% of their rating? Someone tell me that. I guarantee it was a long, long time ago. 50% is a massive amount. And for Chris Jericho to say that this doesn't matter... I mean, what the heck? What is he talking about? What is Chris Jericho talking about? It is mental. And he says it doesn't bother him. It clearly does. And then he went on to say this, quote, "This would be like a football game where you bring in all of your top stars from years prior and beat the other team 30-26. It's like a video game. Let's bring in Tom Brady from 5 years ago and then play him for one game against Chris Jericho. Okay, you guys won, but you only won 30-26, end of quote. But they didn't win 30-26, Chris. They won by over 50%. They won by over 300,000. Now, 300,000 might not seem that much. If you're doing, back in the day when WWE and Nitro and WCW, when they were going against each other and they were doing like millions, 300k might not be that much. But when you're drawing under $1 million, when you're only getting 600k and the other company, the development brand, is getting over 300k more than you, that is a massive number. That is not a 30-26. It's 50% more. So, by Chris's logic, it wouldn't be 26-30. You want to add, it would be more like 39-26. That would be 50%, so to speak. So again, he's making it like it was close here. I mean, it wasn't close, Chris. They beat you by over 2 touchdowns. Get fucking used to it, okay? Jesus Christ, man, this guy is... What has happened to Chris Jericho? Then he went on to end his little rant he says, quote, "It's competition, man. It's good for the fans. It's good for the companies." End of quote. What a load of pish. The only time Chris Jericho has enjoyed this so-called competition is when AEW is winning. As soon as NXT defeats AEW, Chris Jericho can't handle it. He throws his toys at the pram, starts bashing WWE, accuses them of cheating, bringing back people that they shouldn't be using, blah, 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 blah. And this guy likes to call himself the demo god. Do you remember that when the rating didn't matter? Remember when they couldn't beat Raw in the ratings and he said the ratings didn't matter? It was all about the demo. But when they were beating NXT in the ratings somehow did matter. But now they're not beating NXT and now the ratings completely don't matter. But what about the demo? Well, NXT beat AEW last week by 50k in the 18-49 demo. So where's your demo god status now, Chris Jericho? Absolutely embarrassing, guys. Embarrassing for Chris Jericho. Embarrassing from AEW and embarrassing from Tony Khan. That is it, guys. I'll catch you in the next one. Just it's comical stuff for AEW. I mean, listening to the meltdowns and stuff over the ratings is far more interesting than actually watching wrestling these days. It's insane. Anyway, guys, catch you next time. Leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe, and peace.